Ever thought about living in sunny Portugal? Sure, those sun-kissed beaches and tasty pastries paint a dreamy picture. But hold up, there's a shadowy side to this paradise that very few people chat about. Before getting lost in daydreams of sipping vinho by the sea, let's dive into the lesser-known, darker side of life there. It might just blow your mind. 1. Low wages. You wouldn't believe the wage situation in Portugal. So, I was digging around and found out that their minimum wage in 2023 is just 760 euros a month. That's one of the lowest in the EU. And get this, the average wage isn't much better, just 1,271 euros a month. That's way below the EU average, which stands at about 2,189 euros. Now you might ask, why is it so low? I had the same question. Turns out a big chunk of their economy relies on sectors like tourism, agriculture, and textiles. These aren't the high-paying, techie kind of sectors, more of the low-skilled stuff. Now, why should you or I care about this? Well, think about it. With such low wages, people are struggling big time. Basic stuff like getting a decent place to live, putting food on the table, even getting good healthcare or education becomes a challenge. I found this stat and it shocked me. 17.2% of people in Portugal are at risk of poverty or feeling left out in 2023. That's higher than the EU average. 2. High unemployment. Portugal's job scene is kinda wild and not in a good way. Did you know their unemployment rate was 7.2% in the beginning of 2023? That's higher than the EU average, which sits at about 6.3%. And you'd think that's bad? Brace yourself. Back in 2013, during their debt crisis madness, it skyrocketed to a crazy 16.2%. I can't even imagine that many people out of work. Now, why is it like that? Well, Portugal's got some deep-seated issues, buddy. Their economy's been dragging its feet with stuff like low productivity, not being super competitive internationally, a massive public debt, and high taxes. It's like trying to run with weights on your ankles. And remember the COVID-19 mess? It hit their tourism sector like a ton of bricks. A lot of people in Portugal depended on that for their livelihoods. 3. Cold weather. Ever been to Porto? Gorgeous place, right? But come January, it gets chilly. I'm talking around 10 degrees Celsius, and that's during the day. Nights can be a whole different story. Sometimes it even drops below freezing. And I swear, there's something about the humidity there. It just bites. It makes the cold feel like it's getting right into your bones. Plus, every now and then, you might even see snow. And don't even get me started on the rain. In Porto, they get a whopping 1,450 millimeters a year. Guess when most of it decides to come down? Between October and March. So if you're the outdoorsy type, or if you love a bit of sightseeing, that can be a real downer. Oh, and the Atlantic winds, those can be fierce. Now, you might think, alright, I'll just stick to the capital, Lisbon. Well, slow down there, buddy. Lisbon's winter isn't much of a picnic either. It's milder than Porto, sure, but still gets its fair share of cold and rain. Sometimes it even drops below freezing at night. And get this, because of its location near the Tagus River and the ocean, flooding can be an issue. So maybe pack an extra pair of rain boots. And speaking of cold weather, ever heard of SAD? No, not feeling sad, but seasonal affective disorder. It's this mood disorder some people get during winter when there's less sunlight. Portugal's gray days might make you more prone to it. And trust me, you don't want to go through winter feeling down. Also, with the cold and dampness, catching a cold or a flu becomes like a rite of passage. And if you have breathing issues or allergies, be ready for some challenges. Some folks use wood-burning fireplaces, which looks cozy and all, but the smoke, not great for the lungs. 4. High taxes. Now, have you ever wondered how taxes work for residents over there? They're getting taxed on basically every cent they make worldwide. The rates? They bounce around from 14.5% and can shoot all the way up to 48% for 2023. And if you're not living there but earning some cash in Portugal, that's a flat 25% going to taxes. But wait, it gets even spicier. If someone's making more than 80,000 euros a year, they've got this extra solidarity tax ranging from 2.5% to 5%. Now, I always thought higher taxes meant things run smoother, but that's not quite the story in Portugal. They've got this super tangled bureaucracy that would give anyone a headache. If you want to start a business there, you'll get stuck in this never-ending loop of paperwork and waiting. Need electricity? More forms. Want to register a property? Even more waiting. And don't get me started on taxes. It's a maze. The World Bank's report had them ranked 39th out of 190 economies in terms of ease of doing business. Not the best look. 5. Transportation issue. There's a bit of a glitch in Portugal when you're trying to get around, especially if you're big on public transport and hate being stuck in traffic. Let's chat about metros first. While Lisbon and Porto rock some pretty neat metro systems, that's pretty much where it ends. Want to get to some cool spots in Lisbon or Belém or Alfama? Tough luck! The metro's a no-show there. And if you're dreaming of bouncing around to other cities, well, the metro won't be your knight in shining armor either. You'd be looking at buses, trains, or your own four wheels. Speaking of buses, that's a whole other story. Now, buses are everywhere, but they've got their quirks. Some places have you waiting forever, and when they finally show up, they're jam-packed. Ever heard of the Algarve? Beautiful place, but their public transport? Big no-no. Buses come around like once or twice an hour and stop at the oddest spots. Plus, if there's a traffic jam or some road work or even a strike, your bus might just stand you up. And traffic, don't even get me started. Portugal's love affair with cars has them boasting one of the highest car ownership rates in all of Europe. The result? Clogged roads. In 2020, Lisbon and Porto were chilling in the top 10 list of Europe's most congested cities. Imagine cruising around Lisbon and spending nearly a third more time than you would want to just because of traffic. And it's not just the time, it's the noise, the pollution, and the sheer stress. Oh, and if you're thinking of getting your own ride, you'd better have a fat wallet. Portugal's tolls are no joke. Some highways can cost you up to 25 cents for every kilometer you cover. And parking? In 2020, both Lisbon and Porto were among Europe's priciest for parking. Just parking for an hour might set you back a couple of euros. 6. Language and cultural barrier. You know how we pride ourselves on being multilingual? Well, it's a bit of a different story in Portugal. According to the Eurobarometer survey for 2023, only a third of Portuguese speak a foreign language. And here I thought the EU average of 56% was already on the low side. Dig into this. The top 3 foreign languages running are English, French, and Spanish. But here's the catch. This is not a uniform spread. If you're in the city or hanging with younger crowds, you're in luck. But put yourself in the countryside and bam, language barrier city. But language is only the tip of the iceberg. The cultural climate is another can of worms. Sure, Portugal has had this rich history of immigration and colonization, which boils down to a really vibrant culture. A lot of people out there aren't really tuned into all the cultural vibes of these different groups that they live amongst. For example, sometimes this is a lack of respect or even a lack of understanding of what others bring to the table. And yes, you guessed it, there are some pretty shady stereotypes hovering about a bunch. It's not all sunshine and beaches. These biases can lead to some really nasty situations, like discrimination or even violence. 7. Crime rate. You'd never believe this, but you've got to keep a super close eye on your stuff in Portugal, especially in cities like Lisbon and Porto. Pickpockets and bag snatchers seem to be everywhere. According to the latest data from the Portuguese Ministry of Internal Affairs, there were 140,522 crimes against property reported in 2023, an increase of 2.4% from last year. And it's not just the locals, tourists, and people like you and me who decide to hang out for a bit longer, we're all on their radar. Even the US travel people have put out warnings for those heading to Portugal. Rule of thumb, if you don't need it for the day, don't bring it out with you. But hold on, there is more. You know how some places get famous for, let's say, not so great reasons? For Portugal, it's drugs. I mean, yes, they made waves when they decriminalized small amounts of drugs back in 2001, but there is a downside. The country's become this hotspot for moving drugs from places like South America into Europe. And even though it's lenient on users, they've got one of the highest rates of drug deaths in all of Europe. 8. Natural disasters. Now let's talk about Mother Nature. Portugal's got this wild side when it comes to natural disasters. Earthquakes, floods, landslides, wildfires, they've had their fair share. The country sits in a zone where big quakes can happen. Heard of the one in 1755 that flattened Lisbon? It was massive. And their coastline, while it's absolutely stunning, it's also on the lookout for storms and tsunamis. The summer months can get really dry, and wildfires become this monstrous threat. Just a few years back in 2017, it was chaos. Over 100 people lost their lives, and huge patches of land were just gone. I mean, overall, it's not all bad. A lot of us are drawn to Portugal. The culture, the food, those beautiful coastlines. It's got a ton of perks, like friendly people and a laid-back lifestyle. But like any place, there's another side to the story. Before packing up and diving into that Portuguese dream, it's smart to take a look at the full picture. Every spot has its challenges, right? So if you're thinking of making a move, just do a little homework first. Balancing the pros and cons always helps. Packing your bags for Portugal or still giving it a thought? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you liked this video, do us a solid and smash that like button. Make sure to subscribe so you'll be the first to know about upcoming content. And buckle up, folks, because there's a lot we have in store for you.